Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here to discuss the offense from that win over the Browns. Definitely some pluses and minuses in the midst of a great week of Baltimore sports, or at least we hope that's the way it ends up. The Ravens gave us the start on that with a great win on Sunday. The Orioles lost a game that didn't matter, and that was fine. And then the weekend to look forward to is going to be really special with the Orioles games at home on Saturday and Sunday, and that which we still don't have a time on Sunday. And then
Yeah, I don't think so. And I remember them saying that there was a concert, Billy Joel maybe, or something on Saturday. So had to move that game up too. But yes, Ken, not to interrupt, but what a great, month. It was just wonderful. The baseball, I'm a huge baseball fan too. And to have the team start, what was it? Tampa Bay started 13-0, maybe 20-3, something like that. I think that is correct. And just playing with them, battling with them all season, and finally catching them, I believe, in July. And all these comebacks that not only we had, but the Rays had, and have to win 100 games to do it. It's a football show, but it was a great day, great few weeks, great month in Baltimore.
So if you don't recognize that voice, that's Jason Smith, who I didn't introduce properly already, who's does a lot of Baltimore sports content creation, mostly about the Ravens and all kinds of film cut-ups. You know him as Huddle It Up Films on Twitter/X. But anyway, Jason, a longtime friend of the show, been on many times as a guest, and really appreciate him making time for this at the last minute. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being able to turn to you when I need to, Jason.
I'm here anytime. And yes, I do keep my thoughts normally to football, and I'll throw in some funny stuff and wish people happy birthdays and comment on their pets and stuff. But it's a football account at Huddle It Up Films, and on YouTube, Huddle It Up Films as well. I have a good cut up this week. I've already done on Lamar and the throws that he made, and that's out off to a very good start. But if you want to focus in on a player and not have a lot of fluff in there, there's the celebrations, the crowd shots. I kind of keep it simple, focus on one player. I'm thinking about doing one on Myles Garrett actually this week, just show how the Ravens tried to defend them. So that's another video that would tie into what we're talking about this evening.
That was really special, by the way. All of the scheme that the Ravens threw at Myles Garrett was very impressive in this game. All the chip blocks, all of the help blocking, all of the things they did, basically not leave McCary on an island. It still didn't work out all that well for McCary, unfortunately. Not to give away the second half of the show, but he had help, and they tried to do. And today, kind of an interesting signing for the Ravens. They pick up Eric Tomlinson and ask him to add him to the practice squad. Do you think that has anything to do with the current situation at tackle, or do they just feel like they need another backup blocking tight end?
I think both. I don't want to just say that it has to do with the tackle situation, because quite frankly, I don't have a ton of faith in Kolar as an inline blocker. Likely is way far away. He just doesn't have the body type for it. It's no knock on Likely. He's basically a receiver. You can do some move blocking with him, some fullback type, some H-back type stuff with Isaiah Likely. But as far as an inline blocker, he can't get it done, and it's no fault of his own. And Travis Vokalek, I believe, will be a plus blocker. I tweeted that out today. Saw him in line a lot at Nebraska. Thought he was one of the better blocking tight ends in the draft. But Ken, a lot of times for a tight end, it's going to take them a year or so to get to the speed of the game and to muscle up and be able to block people in line. So Eric Tomlinson coming back to me is a nice insurance policy as well for Ricard, who's been handling a lot of that stuff. And just a more traditional inline blocker to be able to free Mark Andrews up.
Yeah, and that is an important consideration. If Mark Andrews is having to do a lot of what on our score sheet is R89 not under or L89 not under, that means that he's chip blocking before he goes out on the route, and that severely cuts down on the route tree that he can run. So it's definitely a concession to having to chip block on those plays. So
right.
Anyway,
So,
the Ravens.
so tackle concerns. You have the tight ends who's not in their skill set, and then you have some receivers banged up. So I would attribute it to all three things to get to there. It's just a signing that makes sense and a guy that we know.
Yeah, I mean, a guy with I think is a big deal. But Tomlinson played 23 games with the Ravens already. Really good inline blocker. He only had 2 targets that whole time. So I would probably take the route that they're not really looking for what he can do for us as a receiver, but they might be thinking about, Ricard's hip is not perfect. Let's make sure we have a fullback if we need a fullback. Let's make sure we have an extra guy we can bring in at the end of games to try and close it out. An interesting thing that I didn't really have on the open here, but since we're on it, let's talk about it a little bit, is that the Ravens have played a lot of unbalanced line the last 2 weeks. And the purpose of unbalanced line, generally speaking, is to tuck a particularly poor in-space blocker. It's one of the reasons you do it. So you shift one tackle from the other side, and you can do it. You can do a 6, or you can do it with a 5 unbalanced. So a 5 unbalanced, you may have 3 to one side of center and 1 to the other side of center. The 1 to the other side of center is typically a guard. Okay. And he may even pull on the play to the strong side, what you make it to the strong side. But the guy you tuck in is typically your tackle who can't really move very well. So in 2008, when they did it, was Willie Anderson. In 2023, when they did it early, it was Morgan Moses. And they haven't used Daniel Faalele for that yet. But my guess is he is a prime candidate for tucking. He's not a great in-space player, not real great legs. And I think it could work run or pass to set the pocket up that way with him tucked.
Agreed. And also on Tomlinson, just one more thing to go back to. I do have a cut up of some of his blocking on the channel. And as you know, Ken, even though this was Greg Roman's scheme, a lot of the assignments are going to be the same for Tomlinson.
Sure.
You're going to basically be doing the same thing in any scheme. So you can get an idea of what kind of a blocker he was for us. And I thought he did a good job and came in and helped out when Nick Boyle was obviously hurt.
All right, so the Ravens took a big step forward, a second consecutive road win the division. They're 3-0 now, a chance to go 3-0 on Pittsburgh on Sunday. That would make this one of the really big weeks in Baltimore sports. If you get a Cleveland, Pittsburgh win, goal posting a couple of Oriole wins, or maybe the Oriole overlaps in the other direction on Sunday. But boy, that's something to really look forward to and hope for. The injury news remains a little grim. Ajabo now maybe gone for the year. We talked about that on yesterday's show. Moses had an MRI today. They said there'd no more Monday, but I'm very concerned about the situation there. So it sounds to me like they might have had a preliminary indication that it is something pretty severe. And Harbaugh used a different term than he uses. He uses long-term. So I don't think any of these injuries are long-term to start with. But this time he said, I don't think any of these are long-term. No, we got another definition here, meaning that, whether the guy is going to be out for the year or not, I suppose. But it sounds like Moses is going to be lost for at least weeks, if not longer. So that's unfortunate. Obviously, the Ravens had other injuries. I've heard some preliminary news personally that Daryl Worley may look like he's okay and is able to play next week. So we'll see how that works out. That's unconfirmed from just a source, I will call it. I don't like doing that, but that's what I've heard. Anything else on injuries you want to talk about while we're here? Because
no, I'm curious tomorrow. Maybe we'll know by the time the show comes out. But I didn't see a lot of Nelson Aguilar at the end of the game, and I saw him hobble on my TV. I can't quite remember the play. But it was after a play, and I tend to notice those things and really pay attention if somebody gets up walking a little differently. And so I'm going to be keeping an eye out for Nelson Aguilar, Ken, and that would be a big blow as well, considering we don't know what's happening with Bateman or Odell at this point. Hopefully Odell is back. I feel a little more confident in him. Morgan Moses, it looked like a peck to me. It looked like
always the fear.
Yeah, and hopefully it's especially for a right tackle, and if it's his right arm especially, I mean, that's what you're basically defending the edge when you get beat a little bit and there's that wrestling match at the top of the arc. Kudos to Marcus Williams for fighting through his pec injury, but they play completely different positions. Marcus Williams can kind of hide his a little bit, baby it a little bit, and be careful with how he tackles. Morgan Moses at right tackle, man, that's a major concern for me as well, Ken.
So there's only 3 really common shoulder injuries that I'm familiar with, and somebody else could bring up. I maybe 4, because we had Brandon Croxton on the show last night defensive lineman suggested it may have been a dislocated shoulder, in which case the ligaments are never right and it might pop out a second time. But that's almost like one of the really unserious versions of that. He'd be back in weeks from something like that. He'll play in a harness that'll hopefully keep the thing stabilized. If it's anything involving the labrum, it is terrible news for a tackle, and frankly, it might be career ending. It's not quite as bad as if you were a pitcher, but it's very bad in terms of having your right shoulder injured in that way. A pec he's lost for the rest of the year, but there's no reason why he can't be back next year. So that would be, in some ways, not the end of the world as far as injuries go. And then the one you really hope for is that it's a stinger and you just rub it out and he's okay. But I think we would know that already. And so, when you're looking at the universe of shoulder injuries, and I'm sure there are doctors who listen to this show, and by the way, leave comments if you would, as to what other possibilities you think might have occurred there. I think that we're not looking at a good set of potential outcomes here. Outcomes is the wrong word because that's after you have your surgery and whatnot. But we're not looking for through a good set of prognosis and from what's going on here, what we've seen so far.
Yes, just definitely concerning.
One of the things that's happening is the Ravens are not managing their game day roster as efficiently as possible. And this last week, something happened that it's never happened before. The Ravens activated 9 offensive linemen. Now, the NFL rules state you have to have 8 offensive linemen in order to get a 48th player active. And the normal NFL team would like to only have 7. And some even have cheated, like the Ravens in the past with Isaiah McKenzie, had an 8th offensive lineman who's really something else, like a fullback or a defensive lineman in McKenzie's case. It's very unusual that anyone, I've never seen it happen, that anyone would have 9. And it only happened here because there weren't enough other healthy players.
Yes, and I want to say something similar last week where we only had healthy players active. So it's definitely just a symptom of the health on this team and having a lot of guys who are close or we don't want to put on IR, but we're going to be relying on. So we need to get some bodies back to be able to manage the roster like we want to.
Yeah, even to continue as they are, they're going to need to get some bodies back. So anyway, Salah being on an NFL roster at this point, NFL game day roster, doesn't really make any sense. He's not ready to play. They used 8 offensive linemen in this game. They brought in Mustafa and Cleveland for 3 snaps. They had Fa'alele as a replacement for Moses. So they used everybody they had except for Salah, but he was honestly kind of superfluous to this. Red zone efficiency on the offense, probably the biggest story for the Ravens at this point. But they sputtered again in terms of series success rate. So the first 2 games of the year, they were 79% series success rate. The last 2 at 68%. And they kind of had an excuse, I thought, against the Browns, managing out the game, taking win probability judgments over expected points judgments in the second half, where they had, a chance to just get the game over with, get the clock over with. Frankly, just getting the game over with without additional injuries was a big goal for the Ravens, even if it wasn't increasing their win probability at that point. But they it made a lot more sense in this game to have kind of a low rate. It didn't make any sense against the Colts that they weren't able to move the ball more effectively. And you could blame some things like it being a little wet in terms of the weather and the field and whatnot. But it wasn't a good thing. And now it's been backed up by another game, even against a good defense, it's still not a good thing. So the Ravens need to improve that. That was something that's very special about their start to the season through the first 2 games.
Yes, as far as the series success rate, my opinion on it didn't change over last week. I wouldn't say a stock up, stock down because of what you said. With the challenges of this game, number one, the Browns pass rushers versus our backup left tackle, and then half the game with a backup right tackle who's not ready to play. It doesn't look like he's ready to play at the NFL level. And then, the lead that we jumped out to, the opposing quarterback that we were facing. I mean, after Morgan Moses went down, Ken, I immediately went into that mode. Just let's just keep this clock running and get the heck out of here. We got another road division game next week. We're banged up as it is. It's not going to look pretty, but I didn't expect it to look pretty going into Cleveland in the first place. Let's just get out of here healthy. So red zone efficiency, though, excellent. series success rate and I guess my overall view of the offense didn't really change. I thought Lamar looked very good, and that bodes well for the Ravens.
Yeah, we'll get to the red zone efficiency a little bit later specifically. It's not sustainable is the problem with that. It's been fantastic, but unsustainable. The series success rate, I was hoping it was sustainable at the 79% level because that's about the level 2019 Ravens were. Probably a little greedy on my part, but Rob Long had an interesting question on the radio yesterday morning. He said, why isn't the red zone success sustainable? And I was kind of at loss for a moment. And, when I got home or on the way home, I'm thinking the correct answer to that is I know it for the same reason that I know a 450 hitter in April isn't going to hit 450 for the season because it's outside of the normal parameters of success. So, that's what it is. And I couldn't come up with the words on air, but I appreciate the question. It's good to be challenged when you make a statement like that. And it's just inherently obvious to me. And I've gotten past the ability to explain it logically. But the red zone success is terrifically important, and we'll get to that a little bit later.
Well, hey, sometimes it helps to have that question asked because somebody else out there is thinking the same thing. And yes, I would say, Ken, as far as the series success rate compared to 2019, any offensive comparison to me compared to 2019 is yes, Ken, you're getting a little greedy on me there, buddy. Getting a little greedy. I know you're sick. I'm not trying to make you laugh too much, but let's just keep it similar. That would be great. Anything close to 2019, I'm taking.
Right. Well, me too. And, for 3.08 points per drive is never going to happen again. Unfortunately, it was considered slander in the 2019 to 2020 off season to say anything about how Lamar's not ever really going to have as good a season again. It was considered absolute slander. And not only that, other things go with that are worse than slander. But slander certainly to say, well, why won't he improve? He's only 22. Why on earth would he not improve from this? Well, there's good reasons for it because he's had a season that's completely outside of the norm of any quarterback in NFL history, and the bulk of strategies will tend to take away some things that he's been able to do very well. So.
And you know what, Ken? Before we move on, I'm expecting the same thing. I said this when I had Sarah on my channel before the season. I'm expecting the same thing to happen, the same kind of dynamic here with Lamar and Monken. May have said it on your show, but the NFL has never seen Monken offense with Lamar operating, just as G-Row took and Lamar took the NFL by storm. That same dynamic, I think, exists here. And Monken, we mentioned it with Garrett, but his ability to adjust his offense in subtle ways and to manage the games that we've seen, to me, is a really good sign that hopefully he can stay ahead of the curve as people adjust to the Ravens and what they're seeing from this offense, that Monken can keep throwing out some new stuff and evolve better than G-Row did from year to year with Lamar.
That's an interesting point you're making there. And I need to see more to know that Monken can do that because Roman was really good at layering in new additions to the run offense to try and make it better. But the problem was he was kind of working in two dimensions, and Monken seems to be working in three. And when the pieces all come together, including the speed and some of the receiving talent that this team can have, hopefully they'll be in a better position to take advantage of this. Really want to see the play action game come back. That's what I really want. I want to, and maybe that's the next offensive coordinator. He's a play action guru. He's a pick route guru. He's whatever it might be to give you those extra things that we're not picking up here with either Giro or Monken, just to throw new wrinkles in.
There you go.
All right. This win very much led by the defense. We got a long thing about the I Dare You defense in the defensive podcast, but characterized by some amazing unwillingness to budge on scheme and personnel based on an inability for the Browns to ever get started. So they had 36 of 40 four-man rushes, which generated a 45% pressure rate. So no problem there in terms of getting plenty of pressure with four. I've seen all kinds of things out there today about should we be concerned about the Ravens only having having success from other players with a four-man pass rush. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about that, even though we're on the offensive show here. Do the Ravens have to get a top-flight edge rusher? Or can they continue to do things in a way where they have two component pressures that lead to sacks, say? So someone gets there in time, maybe not to finish the sack, like Mr. Almost, but gets him off the spot and gets him moving, and then somebody else finishes the sack. I'm actually really optimistic about the Ravens defense being quite good for doing that.
I mean, it's funny because I've been having outside the box from what normal fans, other analysts have been thinking lately, just everybody besides me, when they're looking at who to add. And I'm so impressed with what Mike Macdonald has done that I almost want an offensive player over a defensive player. Like, I feel like Mike Mack now, we have a season and plus 4 games of him working with different pieces, different parts. Sacks are up. What are we, third in the NFL in sacks? We were top 5, 6 last year in sacks. Interceptions are coming, points per game, anything you want to look at. Like, the defense is pretty darn good, and that has been under Mike Macdonald, despite the moving parts. But on offense, it's like, okay, we've offensive line. Can we get a tackle? Can we get a more explosive, maybe even a running back or something for cheap that you're not thinking of? Who's out there, who's available? What can we kind of give up without giving it up? But I mean, to answer your question, I mean, heck, sign me up for a great pass rusher. Of course. I mean, that's something I wouldn't say no to. I will say that I'm hoping that Adafio Way's injury is something that heals up, because I thought that he looks like a different player. Different player, Ken, completely, with this spin move and the way he's able to disengage now. He clearly took a step in the right direction, and I was really impressed with what I saw of him. Away, Clowney, yes. Van Noy, probably. Tavius Robinson and others, no. That's kind of where I'm looking at. We pretty much have 3 guys that I trust to get home.
And hopefully Tyus Bowser will be back, because he adds another dimension entirely in terms of the ability to drop to cover and the flexibility that gives you. But I think I'm with your original comment that if I were to rank the needs, it wouldn't be getting a top flight pass rusher, because the resource cost that's going to be enormous. Whoever is trading us one, if it's even an Ngakoue level player, which is not a top flight pass rusher really, he's a good pass rusher, but he's not a top flight guy. And you trade, a second round pick, a second and a fifth, something like that. It's way too much draft capital for a team that needs to hoard picks like nobody's business for next year. I think there are guys out there on the street, and hey, we just got one this week in Kyle Van Noy, that can fill your need sufficiently. If a tackle, though, that's going to be very, very hard to find, and that will completely derail the Ravens season if they don't have that guy. If the games we just saw from Faalele and McCary are what we can expect on a weekly basis versus average or better pass rushers, and they obviously faced better pass rushers than that this week, we cannot wait to move.
Right. Pass rusher seems like an obvious need, and corner was too, but the way that Mike Macdonald plays his coverages, you can see we don't need, we can have a very good defense without superstars. Look at the way he's using these inside linebackers. Not a position that teams typically lean on for defensive success. You want your edge rushers and your corners. Those are the players who really get paid. But yeah, of course I would like to have a pass rusher. Of course I would like to have other players, but pass rusher stands out on defense. But I'm almost like, Ken, let's see who's out there and who can help the team most. And if it ends up being a guard, I'm willing any kind of depth at any position.
Okay, that might be a possibility too, particularly if they're going unbalanced line and they find a guard who can play a little bit on the outside as the odd man, as the short man on the short side. That could be pretty interesting too. I just want to say this in particular. The defense wouldn't work if it weren't a complete team defense like it is now. It's 2 good safeties on the back end, and I wish it didn't have to have Hamilton back there, because I think he could be even more impactful at that nickel spot. But with even just Worley and then Stone, who's been unbelievably good so far this year on the back end, you've got 2 linebackers who now get it in terms of what's going on behind them. You hear me, Patrick Queen? I'm talking to you right now, who now get it in terms of having some coverage ability and being able to make plays on understanding what's going on behind you. Roquan, fantastic, reading the eyes of the quarterback, getting in, closing the window entirely and doing it correctly. that's allowed them to minimize this cover two schemes. Have allowed them to minimize the weakness they have at cornerback and force all of that action into a short zone area where they can deal with it. And Stevens, who's a big physical cornerback, has played all the snaps and been fine. And Darby and Yasin, another physical guy, but Darby also a more of a finesse guy, have been very effective also at being in the right place at the right time. And you look at all their yards per target, they're amazing, which shouldn't be a surprise because the whole team's only allowing 3.7 yards per pass play. 3.7.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So yeah, I threw guard out there as just like an unlikely, you know what I mean? Just nobody's thinking about that. But I was just trying to make the point that literally any position I would be open for. I'm almost more bent on like, let's just improve the offense, give ourselves some depth there, and roll what we have on defense, because I mean, the numbers don't lie over this. We have, like I said, 21 game, include playoff sample size, what Mike McDonald, and it looks pretty darn good.
How are you on the 12 or 13 or 14 games or whatever it's been since Roquan arrived?
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, Ken, finish up.
But the point was that Bowser came back on the exact same week last year. And I was like, well, yeah, Roquan's played way better than we expected. But Bowser also came back that same week, and that was another big boost to the defense. But now they're doing it with Roquan without Bowser these first few weeks of this season, and not just without Bowser, without a whole bunch of other people. And it really, I think, the most important cylinder was correctly identified and paid this offseason.
Yes, I was a big believer. I was a big proponent of it. I faced some backlash. Ken, the positional value community is no joke, and they do have some legitimate, like corners are important, edge rushers are important, tackles ultra important. So it's not like I'm oblivious to positional value. I definitely take that into consideration, especially on my draft board. But Roquan is one of those force multipliers. The base nickel that we're playing, it almost seems like, all right, we're willing, if you're good enough, to give up a little bit more on the run game, but we are not giving up anything in the pass game. We can play that balance of nickel and stop both with the range of Patrick Queen next to Roquan. He's made Patrick Queen deserves his own credit for getting himself better. But when you have Roquan in the building, it's hard not to notice that it raised Queen's level even a little bit more than that. There's just a certain ferocity in his leadership too. I heard a lot of this stuff where, we have a lot of nice guys around. We have a lot of this and that. Well, we certainly don't look like a lot of nice guys on defense now with Roquan in the middle. And the tackling on this team overall, Ken, and it's an offensive show. But we watched the Giants game last night, and you saw Wink's defense have tackling issues. It's something about Mike McDonald, whether he's focusing in on a practice or whether it just has to do with his style of everybody with their eyes forward on the offense and rallying to make a tackle. I mean, it seems like when we got Roquan, Kyle Hamilton, Mike McDonald, our tackling issues immediately disappeared.
Well, you hit on it exactly, in my opinion, is the eyes on the quarterback, eyes on the football defense they're playing right now. If the other team cannot get you out of a zone scheme because they just can't figure out how to beat it, your linebackers are too good. It doesn't matter that you have two guys back. It doesn't matter that you throw to the outside. It doesn't, all of the things in terms of be able to beat a zone defense. If the other team can't figure out how to do it, you're always going to be in a fantastic position to come downhill on the football. And you got ferocious guys who are not afraid to tackle at basically every spot. Even the ones who are a little bit smaller. So it's exciting to see that. And it reminds me a lot of the 2000 defense in that regard. And the 2000 defense even had cornerbacks they were telling stay out of the play with Starks and McAllister. They knew they couldn't afford to get them hurt, but they were still ferocious downhill tacklers. And very exciting to watch this defense. And I'm averse to making any sort of comment about defenses being like the 2006 defense or like the 2008 defense or like the 2000 defense or like the 2014 defense. But this defense has a chance to be one of the special ones that we remember for what it is, which is a great team defense, really integrated in a way that is very, very special and very results focused.
Agreed.
right, let's move on to some other general comments, and we'll get to the offense. And I promise not to let the show go too long. I'm sorry for yakking down this long defensive rabbit hole for a while. They got outsnapped by the Browns 65-55 in this game. I think this is another case where I've read some Browns Twitter and a little bit of Browns message board stuff, and to them, the Ravens outsnapped them by a mile in this game. And it's just not true. They had 10 more snaps than the Ravens in the game. And snaps are what matter, not time of possession for tiring the defense. If you want to get the game over with, time of possession is more important. If you want to get the other team tired, it's snaps. So that's always a thing I want to point to. And that deals with a lot of the series success rate. They just did not have a good, comfortable way of maintaining snaps in this game.
Yes, I'd like to see. I don't think it was by far a great offensive performance, but I thought it was a solid offensive performance, as we said, considering the circumstances, everything that went into the game. So I would like this to be 50-50. I'm not expecting the Ravens to dominate time of possession like they did under Roman. It's one of the symptoms of a new offense. But yes, we can do better than that. We shouldn't be outsnapped by 10, 15 every game.
Right. All right. So somebody had a question for me about points per drive, and I want to address this and the question in general. I had been tossing out a number of 2.65 in terms of points per drive is where I think the Ravens would be good to get back to. And I'm basing that on the 2019 offense being at 3.08 points per drive. And there will need to be efficiency somehow with a Monken offense to get that going. But the problem with that is scoring in the NFL as a whole has been greatly depressed over the last years since 2019. So there's been many fewer super high scoring teams, and the high in the whole entire NFL is right around 2.71. I think it was the Chiefs last year. So since I have to moderate my 265 down from there, because I think the Ravens, with the defense they've got, I think if they could be in the top 5 or 6 in the league of points per drive offensively, with what's going on, certainly with what's going on with their injuries right now on offense, I think that would be pretty good. And the 2.33 is actually fine for this game. Now, I know they were playing Cleveland. In some cases, you're saying you're dominating the game defensively. That's to lead to some additional points. And it kind of did, with Stevens intercepting the ball, returning it to the 10, and a quick punch in. But how are you feeling about, the number of points they scored against Cleveland, given the circumstances?
I think for where the offense is at this point, I'm more than okay with it. I think it's been good. I would say good. And, it's just hard to neglect the fact it's an excuse, sure, but it is a brand new offense for the guys. And again, there's people here this week that aren't there next week. So it's a little bit different from, okay, we've known this guy's out for the season since, before the season started. Like, we have Ronnie, we don't have Ronnie. We had Odell, we don't have Odell. Bateman's back, now he's back out. Linderbaum was out for a game. So overall, I think that we're on track. We're on track, Ken. Like, I would say the offense is good. If it's 2.5 points per drive, if it's 2.6, if it's 2.4, as long as we're winning it's okay. I just expect it to get better as the year goes on. Okay,
well, fair enough, and I would expect a general upward trend in that. But the thing that's not going to be repeatable is the red zone efficiency. They had another 4-for-4 game. They've now scored 8 consecutive touchdowns on red zone possessions, which, by the way, we never would think about this as a problem. But, an analyst can turn anything into a worry with what's going on. And they've had 15 red zone possessions this year with 1 interception. That was the very first drive, 2 field goals, and 12 touchdowns. So 6.1 points per red zone possession, 91 total points on those 15 possessions.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and the brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit? Cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at a bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
Is that good, Ken? Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. It's you're hitting that isn't even hitting 450 in April. That's more like hitting 535 in late April. Right
Or 450 and stealing a base. You get that 6.1, so you get that extra point in there. But yes, I think one of the strengths that Lamar has as a quarterback overall, we've talked about before on the show, Ken, he makes everybody a red zone threat. He's a very good quarterback. However we're doing it, I would just hope that Todd Monken is thinking about the next step, what teams are going to do, because the one thing that does, I would say, that's jumped out in this game is a lot of attention was paid to Zay Flowers. We're talking about subtle things. Maybe it's not technically a double coverage, but if Zay moves this way, that safety comes crashing down on him, or that linebacker is cheating to his side. Step here, step there, second here, second there. So it's not even things that I think that can be quantified in what kind of coverages that we're seeing. But Zay Flowers is being keyed upon. In the red zone, we're not afraid to use them. So we're going to have to keep evolving offensively to keep not that success, but be a successful red zone team.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's an absolutely great point. And one of the things that I have not liked is the Zay Flowers gadget play usage. I don't like wide receiver screens to Zay Flowers because it takes away, draw the safety away. But having you just hear you say that, I love the notion of Zay Flowers calling for the ball in a wide receiver screen and maybe even somebody else setting up on that side to block. You give up those receivers and you might draw 4 defenders to those 2 guys. Then you work it out 3-on-4 with the remaining defenders, assuming you have a 4-man pass rush there. You've got a pretty good option there. But regardless, the impact of that is that you've also spread the field more. And we saw Lamar obviously get a couple more rushing touchdowns this week. Moving linebackers, it's what makes Lamar Jackson a dangerous player.
And I guess the first one, Ken, it seemed like to me at least 2, maybe 3. I didn't even analyze it to say this, but bro, they were following Zay Flowers to that sideline. That is as easy of a Lamar Jackson run, as much space as you're going to see Lamar have between the tackles, and it happened in the red zone. Like, yeah, that I hadn't seen that in a long time, and it just is a credit to how the reputation of Zay Flowers already. Ken, they got to pay attention to him. I'm going to throw it to you on this too. Keaton Mitchell, who knows what's going to happen? I don't have a prediction. But I could see him factoring in some of this gadget stuff as well, as somebody that can make someone miss in space and house call it. Because I'm with you, Ken. It was a concern before the season that Zay would get stuck in this gadget role, and I think he's been a little too gimmicky for me. I would like to see him, run routes as a receiver. He might be one of our better receivers, even as a rookie in that intermediate area. Just whatever kind of routes you want to run with him.
Yeah. I agree with that totally. And the Ravens have 3 other guys on their roster who have the speed to be very, very dangerous gadget players. One is Duvernay, who they're really not using very much since week 2. He had a role against the Bengals and getting that game over with. But he's only been targeted 6 times on the year with 2 receptions for 8 yards, I think. So that's really underutilization of Devin Duvernay. And he could be taking that role away from Flowers and allowing Flowers to do other things to manipulate that defense. Keaton Mitchell, of course, when he comes back. And then we just saw a great game, even though it was in very few touches, from Justice Hill. 3 receptions, that incredible long run play that got called back. That was a wonderful performance. I mean, I know he looked like he was running a little crazy-legged, would you say, in terms of not being completely stable maybe, but very effective.
I thought it might have been the one that was called back where he had a ton of open space. It wasn't a hitch in the giddy up, but it looked like he was landing on his foot intentionally differently.
Really? Okay.
Yes. I would encourage you to go back. I think it's the one that got called back by a penalty. Where
I'll take a look at that.
Screaming down the open field, and Aguilar was out there blocking for him. But yeah, it looked like he was like not planning on one of his feet all the way, like shortening his step, like not coming down on the toe, picking it back up before he came down on the toe.
Oh, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
And to your point, if Monken wants someone other than Duvernay, maybe he's saying, look, but Duvernay is linear. he's got the speed, but he's going to run into a pile like we see on punts. He's not really going to shake you and really threaten it in that way. Justice Hill is really good call there, Ken. But Keaton Mitchell with those running back skills as well, he can shake you and make you miss and then take it the distance. So maybe that's what. Yeah, I was surprised Duvernay wasn't involved, especially this game with Bateman and Beckham out. If he's not favoring Duvernay, maybe Keaton Mitchell. There's reasons to have Gordon active over him, but maybe there's a spot for Keaton Mitchell after all, especially if he can contribute on special teams.
Yeah. Yep. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. 33 run, 22 pass in this game. It's great when you can get that kind of work. A 60% run in the NFL is very rare, but this was a game where the Ravens obviously took some negative win probability plays or some less than optimal expected point plays in the name of win probability in the second half. Let me make sure I get that right. So that ended up being a lot of what they were doing running the football. They also were really trying to run Myles Garrett out of the play, use his own desire to get after the quarterback and accumulate a big sack total to run himself out of the play. They did a good job. McCary's good blocks in this game, in large part, were not him standing up to a bull rush from Myles Garrett, not him standing up to great moves by Garrett. They were letting him faux beat him to the outside and then pushing him past the pocket where Hill could then use that running lane or Gordon or whoever it was.
Yes, we took advantage, I think, early in the game too. Little screen pass to Gus. Just to try to maybe use their pass rush against them. But yeah, I thought that the run pass script was right on time. I didn't at one time in this game think, hey, we should run it more, or hey, we should throw it more. It seemed very balanced to me.
Right. Well, one other thing I wanted to talk about was the time to throw for Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson had been very low, 243 and 259 the last 2 weeks in terms of time to throw. And against the Browns, he was at 319 time to throw. That's order of magnitude higher. And I know people are going to talk about the 43-yard pass to Flowers, where he left the pocket and he had an 8.5 second throw time. That really doesn't even explain the whole thing. 8.5 seconds, if you subtract 3 from that, and we'll just do some basic math here, you're going to get 5.5. Divide that by 22 total pass plays that he had, and you get, I think, 1/4 of a second for each. So even without it, he would have been in the high 2s without it. So a lot of it was the fact that Cleveland was going that 4-man pass rush, and they were taking a little bit longer to get home with all of the games they were playing with Garrett and at times with Zadarius Smith as well, to try and slow them down a little bit. Jackson maneuvered in the pocket, I thought, fairly well in those terms, but the 3.19 time to throw it's not just explainable with that single 8.5 second throw.
Very well explained. Yeah, I think Lamar was under pressure a lot, but time to throw, I think that that it's a credit to Lamar, him being able to have faith in himself, basically to hold the ball, and it might also be a function of not having receivers really open in this game. I didn't see a ton of separation on tape in my first watch.
Well, they did only rush the quarterback with 5 on 3 occasions the whole game. So the Browns really went at the Ravens with a 4-man rush. When they had the 4-man rush, they allowed 6.3 yards per play. So that was 19 for 119. When they had a 5-man rush, they allowed 3 plays for 46. That was 15.3. So substantially better results. Obviously, small sample size you consider there and whatnot. But Lamar's overall game was excellent. We knew that, and the 6.3 is a moderate total. It was a lot of it was what he was able to do there with against the 5-man rush.
Yep. Go ahead, Ken. I was just going to say it's hard for. If I was a defensive coordinator going against the Ravens, I'm not sure how I would attack is basically what I was going to say, because we've seen Lamar great under pressure. We've seen him audible out. If you're going to simulate a lot of pressure, I think it's still a lot to be written on. We've seen not so good Lamar under pressure. So, I think that's how each defensive coordinator attacks is going to be up to him and up to his personnel.
Yeah, I very much agree. And obviously the Browns were able to get a fair amount of pressure in this game with 4 men. So there's no need generally to do it more. And we're really happy that the Ravens had 40 defensive snaps against the pass and had 18 pressures. using, so it's 45%, using primarily a 4-man pass rush 90% of the time, all but 4 of the snaps. The Browns were similar. They had 22 pass or sack results, and 11 of those were pressures, and they used, as I just said earlier, 19 out of 22 4-man looks. So they had a very similar kind of approach to this game.
Interesting, Ken, when you do your know your foe this week, because I'm looking at the Steelers team as kind of similar to the Browns. It's like, all right, we got Highsmith and we got TJ Watt. They got who at tackle? All right, maybe we don't have to blitz Lamar a lot. Maybe we can get pressure with our 4 men. And just to see whoever you have from the Steelers this week, to see what they have to say, because obviously the Ravens are going to prepare for anything. But if you got 2 good pass rushers, great pass rushers compared to the league against the Ravens right now, maybe you don't blitz as much. Maybe you just say, hey, we're going to get home with 4.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Alex Kozora will be the guest this week, one of our favorites from Pittsburgh. Good guy. I'll go through quickly here. 4 ample time and space opportunities the whole game for Jackson. It's only 18%. He's 4 of 4 for 62 yards on those plays, 15.5 yards per play. 7 times the ball was out quickly. That's 32% of the time. He went 5 of 7 for 49 yards, 7.0 yards per play. No problem with that. And 11 pressures on which he went 6 of 8 for 41 net yards and 3 sacks in addition. Still worked out to 3.7 yards per play. I know that doesn't seem like much, but that's really good for pressure for plays on which you're pressured. Okay. Occasionally you get something better, but that is actually really good.
Yes, and I mean we had a -6 yard on a 2nd and 17. I mean there were a few plays, Ken, that Lamar was pretty much dead to rights.
And you're talking about a pass for -6, not even a sack.
A pass for -6. Yeah. Yes, I made a cut up on my channel of his throws, so I'm just looking at my sheet right now, grabbing it. It was late in the game too. Of course, the game was pretty much iced. No offense to the Browns there, but let's just get rid of the screen pass. Let's get out of town. I thought this was an excellent game by Lamar. I'll plug that cut up again on my channel because I just thought that he did a wonderful job. Now, since we're on Lamar, I would say the ball security is still something I'm going to harp on that he needs to be conscious of because it showed in 2018, Ken, and don't have any stats to back this up, but I remember having these conversations before his MVP season. Man, I like the way this guy takes care of the ball. I like the way his ball placement is great. It's always been great. It continues to be superb, protecting receivers and protecting the football. We'll have a stinker every once in a while, but Lamar takes care of the ball when it leaves his hand. I'm just worried about his security with the ball in the pocket specifically, and not when he gets out and runs. But just getting blindsided, he's got to clean that up, Ken. I'm a huge Lamar fan, obviously, but we need him to clean that up.
So 2 plays in this game. One, Lamar lost the ball, but recovered himself before it hit the ground on a sack. I was sure that ball was out because it looked like it was free. But he obviously grabbed it before it went to the ground. The other was on the handoff to Justice Hill, where he inexplicably released the ball, maybe 6 inches away from Hill or 8 inches away, and Hill was not able to collect it properly. So and that's on Lamar.
And that one, Ken, that's on Lamar, but that one, quite frankly, I don't worry about as much because that just seems more fluky. But you're going to have people around you swatting at the ball in the pocket. That's the thing that I think more than anything, he's got to clean up. That kind of play can change the game. To Lamar's credit, though, Myles Garrett swiped at him one time, I think, on one of his sacks or a quarterback hit, and Lamar was able to protect the ball. It looked like one of those, oh, man, he's going to lose this one because how could you possibly feel Garrett in that situation? So Lamar does a good job with it on some plays, just looking for more consistency in that area. You need it.
Okay, now this is what I really wanted to ask you about. I know you've done all the cut-ups in terms of the passes, and I want to talk to you about 3 specific throws for Lamar in this game. And so really appreciate having you for this show. The first one was that, I guess it's sort of a wheel route. It was certainly over the top to Gordon on the left sideline. What were your takeaways from that?
It was a beauty of a throw. I believe he had another throw he could have had there. Now, again, the Browns were paying a lot of attention to Zay. So, if you look at it from the sideline view, you may question why Lamar went there with the ball. But as far as the throw itself, that was a thing of beauty. Fast linebacker, I believe it was JOK in the coverage on that play to Gordon. and what a play by Melvin Gordon. But the throw doesn't get any better than that.
That's from at Ravens Dad 1985, who asked the question to # or hashtag Film Study Mailbag. Somebody born in 1985 might also call it # Film Study Mailbag, but it's hashtag.
Yes.
All right. So, but anyway, really appreciate the question. Brett Hammond's there. The second one is the 8.5 second pocket wandering roll right throw to Flowers that ended up being one of the really big plays of the game.
A difference maker of a throw. That was really beautiful. 49 yards. Yes. So I believe it was a 2nd and 29, Ken.
A 2nd 29 for a gain of 43, right?
Right. For a gain of 43. So you're talking about a big time throw, a drive extender. Normally it drives dead if it's 2nd and 29. The throw itself, of course, it was classic Lamar extending the play. But it also showed his arm talent, I think, not only being able to throw it off platform, but just that far. And it wasn't a ball that had a lot of loft on it. Like Zay was approaching the sideline pretty quickly, so he couldn't afford to just float one up there and, oh man, I got to get it 50 yards or whatever it was. Don't take that literally. Yep. I can put a little air under it to get it 50 yards downfield. No, it had to be a bullet downfield. So you got a sense of Lamar's just pure arm strength on that one. And also Zay started that play, Ken, on the opposite sideline. He was aware to see Lamar roll, and Zay covered a lot of ground. And I got a kick out of this, Ken. If you watch the cut up, you can see it on the All-22, the sideline view of the All-22, that the cameraman did not even expect that ball to go to Zay. He messed up and did a poor job, and Zay went out of his frame. So he had to hurry up and back it up at the last second. That should tell you what kind of throw that was from Lamar.
That is, by the way, really odd when the top view, it's called, is the sideline view, and the All-22 view, though they're both thought of as All-22, is actually from the end zone because the NFL created it so you could see all 22 numbers on the field at the same time. But that side view that they had, the top view, is really marvelous at seeing all depth of routes. That's what it's there for. So zooming in at all, so it takes the receiver out of the frame, is a really big no-no for the cameraman. So that was unfortunate. I'm not 100% sure that is done by an actual cameraman or if they now have a robotic cameraman doing that.
I don't know, but it looked like an actual cameraman to me. Just off the the NFL Plus's wonderful product. It did definitely seem like there was a guy that decided to zoom. You could just tell it looked human controlled. Basically, it looked like the new guy was in there just for the Browns game. It's usually very spot on.
Yeah. All right. And then the last one, of course, that I want to talk about is that what I think is a very low probability throw to Andrews in the back of the end zone that he happened to hit on. Let's talk a little bit about that. Right at the end of the half, Ravens are 14-3. The chance to get 3 and go up 2 touchdowns was looking really attractive, frankly, at that point. But they also had a chance. And I guess, I don't know if they were 1 play away or 2 plays away from having to kick that field goal, but they were in that range. And Lamar comes up with the most beautiful pass you'll ever see to the back corner of the end zone. Your takeaways.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And, I'm just going to give some credit to Mark Andrews here. So talked a lot about Lamar. Beautiful throw by Lamar, but you have to have somebody that you trust in that situation. And that's what Andrews brings. And Andrews, to me, he's a big guy, like 6'5" or something like that. But you look at some of the jumpers and some of the long guys in this league, Andrews doesn't seem like, he's a tight end. He's got a nice catch radius. But it's not like he's Calvin Johnson at the back or Randy Moss. And Lamar doesn't need that much room to trust him. It was pinpoint throw. It was with the defenders, 3 defenders there. None of them had a chance at it. But Mark did. Just beautiful touch by LJ. But also wanted to give a shout to Mark. He's earned that trust from Lamar and comes down with some big catches like that. Yeah.
To me, I look at that throw. And people are gonna bitch and moan at me about this. I don't like that throw. I think it had more interception risk than is reasonable for that exact point. I thought it was more important to go up 17-3 in the game than it was to try and get up 21-3. And I do trust Andrews to make his best effort on the ball. Andrews has not been a guy who's been wonderful at dislodging the football from an underneath interception. He's also, a lot of the interceptions have been overthrows to Andrews, but he's not been a guy who's been exceptionally good at dislodging it. So if that ball's underthrown, it's a real problem. It was a high risk throw. I think we'd agree on that. Fades to the corner of the end zone are low probability throws. And I made the point for years that the Ravens had taken that completely out of their arsenal when they had Lamar, because Lamar had this great ability to move laterally along the line of scrimmage and find an open man that he can drill a laser to or take off himself and get there. You don't need that in your arsenal. You don't need a fade route in your arsenal. And then he's got the most incredible triple covered thing. And I see it. It worked. And I'm like, that was a 40-foot 3-point shot that he took and made. And I'm slightly exaggerating. Maybe it was a 28-foot 3-point shot that he made. But, he could have pushed the ball inside and gone to the line and had a better chance for 2, which is what the field goal would have been.
I hear you. I saw the next gen stats, and I'm not a stat nerd.
What was the number?
It was very low. It was extremely low. And I saw a Ravens fan in their comments asking, is that the lowest probability of it was the single digits or
single?
Yeah, I want to say it was like somewhere between 9% and like 13%. Look it up on ESPN Next Gen Stats, but it was a very extremely low probability.
The other, they typically do completion probability over expected. So they're doing the expected for completion probability is what they're using from that throw. So that had a big contribution to Lamar's overall number, which is like plus 21% for the game. But the thing I would like to know is not just the completion percentage. What was the interception percentage on that throw? Because I bet it was north of what the completion percentage was.
Yeah, well, hey, I guess that's all on how you throw it. You know what I mean? You could sail that ball a little bit more and not try to be pinpoint and take a 5% chance that Mark catches it, but a 0% chance others, or you could raise both of those numbers a little bit. I don't know, Ken, but just messing with you a little bit there. But the 3 gorgeous throws. I want to throw in a 4th. The near touchdown to Nelson Aguilar that preceded a touchdown. Great throw, great ball placement. Nelson just couldn't get both feet in balance. Mm-hmm. And as we close it on Lamar Jackson, 4 incompletions. Ken, I'll go to this real quick. Zay slipped on a 1st and 10. Said my bad afterwards. We got a really good replay on TV of that. It was the end zone throw to Nelson Aguilar. I just said it was a 3rd and 23, which was a screen pass where Faalele was beaten immediately. So, and again, these last 2 were in garbage time. So Lamar just pretty much threw the ball at, I believe, Gus's feet on that. And then a throwaway where Lamar's rolling right, nobody's open. It's 28-3, and he throws it out of bounds. So 4 incompletions, no poor throws, no bad throws on the game. So not only did he have those 4 beauties, there wasn't a bad throw. There wasn't a throw he'd like to have back.
The question for me, a great game, by the way, and I'm not saying anything negative, but Lamar won us this game as much as the defense did, probably, and that's saying a lot given how well the defense played in this game. But the poor throw in the game would have been the Andrews touchdown, and just because it worked out, we can't really claim that it wasn't a poor throw. Let me just say this: I don't want him making that same decision again.
I hear you. As much Joe had those. Joe had a lot of those too. He would drive. He would worry me to death. And athletes, they have that supreme confidence in themselves, man. That's part of what makes Lamar, and what made Joe is the compliment. Hey, Anquan Bolden's there. I'm gonna throw it to him.
All right. Got a few more scheme things I want to talk about that will wrap up this first part of the episode, come back and talk offensive line and talk about the individual player results. But the running back snap division, a little bit interesting to me. Edwards really took the lion's share of the load with 40 snaps. That's a lot more than he's played in a long time. Gordon, 11, Hill, 7. No Duvernay in the backfield. Exactly 1 running back every play. Edwards had 18 touches or touches/targets among 40 snaps. Gordon 4 of 11, Hill 3 of 7, and Hill also had a long reception called back, so it was really like 4 of 7 because he gets a snap count in there, but he didn't really have a touch. Edwards did some workhorse type effort. I wouldn't say that he did anything really special that really felt great to me in this game. Hill was the guy who just stood out again as having an extraordinary game. And I think Gordon actually wasn't bad this time either. Obviously, his running results were decent. He had a great reception for some good yardage.
Yeah, Gordon has surprised me, Ken, in a great way. I wasn't expecting much, if anything, out of Melvin Gordon, but that's my preconceived notions. And when people come to the Ravens, I judge them based off what I see. He's surprised me. I think he's played really well, and I knew he was a good pass protector, which of course works in your favor for any team, especially one that wants to protect the quarterback as much as we do. And Ken, something I've been saying since the preseason, did a little solo video on this. I believe that Hill. I think we met during the preseason, and I made this point that Hill was running basically ahead of Gus at the stadium practices in the preseason games and everywhere I saw. And I think that Justice Hill is just a better fit for a lot of the zone stuff that Monken wants to do. And it's no offense to Gus, but we've seen some hit and miss runs from both of them, some big losses and then some big gains. So when you're looking at Justice Hill, and obviously they wanted him to get healthy, but they needed him for this game. They wanted him this game to feed him the ball. What was it, 4 out of 7 or 4 out of 8 times, whatever it was when he was on the field. So I continue to say that what I saw in the preseason is holding true. Gus is going to be effective, but we're really missing JK. We're really missing JK. I think that he was going to be a workhorse this year, and Justice Hill now plays prominently into the backfield. And we need a back who can run a lot of these zone plays and to capture the edge.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm on board with that. I will say that it is a little bit ironic to me that Melvin Gordon is the last activation at running back. And you could say he was ahead of Hill, but he's really the last activation at running back because he's the elevation. And he gets it over Drake. And the reason I would have to think is fumble risk. After last week, it's just the irony is not lost on me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I kind of like Drake a little better than Gordon, just personally, but it is funny. Yeah, Drake. Yeah, Melvin Gordon. What Ken's saying is Melvin Gordon has a history of fumbles. Drake fumbles once after pretty much securing the ball for a whole year with us, and hey, we can't afford that risk. We'll activate the guy with a history of fumbling.
Let's see. We talked a little bit about Duvernay already. The Ravens had 4 set and 10 chip blockers in the game. I was actually surprised by this when I went back and took a look at it. And they threw the ball 22 times. I would have guessed they used more chips and definitely more sets, particularly with Ricard during this game, but it just wasn't the case. Only 4 set blocks, 10 chip blocks. That's 0.64 per play, which is a high total, by the way. You have 5 eligible receivers per play. This is giving up 13% of those effectively to a lesser set of routes or no route at all if they're set blockers. And so it's not an insignificant concession to the defense you're making to get this extra block. But they sure as hell needed that help with both tackles playing so poorly, and they were trying. I'm not going to blame either of them. They just weren't up to the task. And so they needed to try different things. And I think one of the things I was thinking about going into the game is how can the Ravens scheme to manufacture time and space in the pocket for Lamar? Even though he was pressured a lot, I would still say that Monken met the requirement to do that with all of the scheming they did to just delay and set additional traffic cones out there for Myles Garrett even to run around before he got to Lamar was something.
It's funny because by the end of the game, it was almost like a tell. Like I could tell if they didn't have Ricard lined up, or if they had maybe Gus Edwards was used a lot to help. They used Likely one time, but it was almost like if you don't see somebody over Myles Garrett, this is probably going to be a running play or a quick pass. But they took the chance with Garrett. I want to say twice. And both times Garrett just absolutely, did his thing, did Myles Garrett's thing to Pat McCary, and it didn't work out for the Ravens. So they had to really mix up the way they were protecting, whether it was a running back coming over to help immediately. Gus, really picked up Myles Garrett one time, really saved Lamar's hide. Once a play that could have went horribly wrong. I saw Likely earlier in the game. I saw Ricard over there. They did a lot of things to Myles Garrett that encouraged me. And we may need to do some similar stuff throughout the year against a pass rusher that's just a dominant force.
I think one of the things we may see, and I mentioned this earlier, so I don't want to go into any depth here, is I think we'll see a return to the unbalanced line next week if Faulele ends up being the starter. I honestly, if you want one prediction for me on how the Ravens offense is going to look different, it's going to be a ton of unbalanced line. They used 19 in the previous 2 games, 0 in this one. But I don't really care what kind of front they're facing. Unbalanced line is going to allow them to tuck Faulele. So sometimes it's about your players, sometimes it's about who you're trying to stop on the other team. In this case, they're trying to minimize how Faulele hurts the team by tucking him on a significant number of plays, giving them different looks that they have to adapt to. Get to the line of scrimmage, snap the ball quickly, allow Faulele to push some people around on the inside and run some things that the other team just isn't ready to see. That was very effective against Cincinnati. It was less effective against the Colts, but it was still there. It was something they used, and the personnel is now such that I think they'll go back to it.
And, Ken, another thing I would do is look what I saw. I think the first or second pass of the game, let's swing it out to Gus. Let's swing it out to Gus or Justice Hill or whoever's out there. Let's run a draw play. All the classic offensive coordinator moves that you do to slow down a rush. And, you have – I don't want to overuse Lamar in the run game. That's something I think we've used him a little too much. Done what we've had to do to try to win the games. But, I mean, when it comes down to it, I want Lamar healthy for the long haul. Not saying he's going to get injured, but I'm just saying let's stop asking him to carry the whole offense and get dinged up. You could ding up a shoulder and play through it and not be 100% right. So let's use our backs to slow down this rush, not only with the chipping and such and the double teams, but to use them out of the backfield screens and draws.
Ball out quick opportunities. They can do a lot of that, but I very much do not want to turn Flowers into a ADOT of 3.5 guy the way they did with Marquise Brown in his last year in Baltimore.
I'm your guy on that, Ken. So if you ever want to make a Twitter argument, you just type the @ signal, Huddle It Up Films, and I got your back, buddy.
Okay. Very good. Very good. One thing about arguing with people on Twitter, and generally, if you're wondering why I don't engage in argumentative conversations, it's the time investment. It's too great. I appreciate it, guys. Most of the time, what I would have to say about things doesn't fit in 280 characters. So while I really love what comes from the Twitter community in terms of great questions and great thoughts, I just don't have the time to debate things on Twitter for 2 hours a day that I would probably spend on it if I were really looking at every single question on Twitter.
All right. Well, I'll coach you up, Ken. I give them one good response and maybe two. After I say what I have to say, as a wise man named the Talking Head said, say something once, why say it again, Ken?
All right. Very good. Very good. All right, Jason, always a pleasure to talk football with you, my friend. We're going to come back and talk about the offensive line and some individual results, talk about our MVPs in this game when we come back. But tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Sure. Huddle It Up Films on Twitter and YouTube. Please check out the content that I constantly plug today. So thanks for having me on, Ken. We'll talk again real soon.
All right. Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a film study short, hit me up. One thing I'm going to try and do more of this next off season is get to people who have some sort of analytics study, but that doesn't mean I'm trying to exclude anybody who just wants to talk about some specific Ravens content. So while by looking for national people who want to vet their models analytically, I'm also looking for Ravens content and people who just want to talk about some particular scheme or other thing they would like to discuss or are passionate about the Ravens. Hit me up. DMs are always open. I promise I'll get back to you really quickly. Jason, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Ken.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.